So let's go on to the final topic here, which is the big Broadcom making a $61 billion bet on VMware. You and I both made the media ring circus this week. You know, CNBC, Wall Street Journal, Reuters, Yahoo. I feel like I talked to everybody on the planet about this deal this week. First and foremost, this kind of went very quickly. I think Sunday night last week, about a week ago, it broke. Generally speaking, when these Bloomberg and Wall Street Journal stories break, it means they're serious. Now, Broadcom has made some software acquisitions over the last few years. They acquired CA. The company acquired Symantec, tried to acquire Qualcomm, and that's not really software. I mean, yes, some of it is. And they also tried to acquire SAS. But here's kind of what I'm seeing going on here. This is a perfect example of financial brilliance meeting a opportunity to achieve a goal for the street. If you talk to the technology part of the industry, nobody likes this deal. Nobody from a technology standpoint wants to see VMware under the thumb of Broadcom. Now, I sometimes think Broadcom is disproportionately picked on because it does have extremely shrewd practices as it comes to acquiring companies, stripping out OpEx, running them very profitably, kind of debranding them, and changing kind of the whole trajectory of innovation that come from companies. Having said that, this deal is looking like it might shape up a little bit differently. And, as we've already heard, I think Hock Tan has been long looking. The number was 50%. He's been long looking to try to find an acquisition that takes him to 50% distribution between the chip business and software. I think he knows the cloud is an important place to participate. There are some interesting opportunities from a disaggregation in the network side and VMware and the software and how they might be able to, potentially build something like an AWS Nitro that they could then, commercialize through that, having this entire stack of solutions that it could offer. Having said that, at the same time, they announced that VMware is going to be the brand. So they're going to actually take the entire software portfolio and use VMware's brand, which is a very much a 180 from the acquisition strategy that Hock Tan and Broadcom has used in their software acquisitions so far. By the way, buddy, you look good. You look good on that TV spot.
Yeah, I'm just gonna let myself run. We can just
you're just gonna run with that one for a while. But
6 minutes, buddy.
Yeah, you crushed it. I did the CNBC International. I actually hit it on Sunday night before it broke, even in the United States. I'm pretty proud of that. But nice. I'll kind of finish this because there's a lot to talk about here, but there's just a lot of questions. I think in terms of the business, VMware is at sort of an impasse because it's been a critical software for companies that are currently heavily dependent on virtualization and on-prem and moving workloads to the cloud. But with things like Red Hat, with EKS from AWS, with Azure Stack, we're seeing Anthos. We're seeing more and more companies coming out with solutions to address containers, or there's more and more solutions to address running apps on bare metal. You're seeing more developer apps or developer tools being built to enable, we talked about it with Microsoft, being able to build for multiple operating systems. Now, we were talking more about doing it on, your client, but it's also being done as well for server. And so VMware isn't the juggernaut it maybe once was. And so the big question is, can the innovation continue? Things like Tanzu that are going to be required to make VMware relevant as virtualization to multi-cloud continues to advance into the future. And by the way, I think we've already heard their business model is going to change almost instantaneously to a subscription model. So we're out the gate. We know that there's a plan to sort of shift, change, and come more consumption and cloud-like from VMware, which I'm not sure how that's going to be met from a lot of companies that have spent a lot on licensing. But if we learned anything from Microsoft, that pivot in the long run tends to work out.
Gosh, where do I start? First off, the passion around this one is so surprising. And I think this shows what an icon that VMware is. I got to know VMware back in the early 2000s. Essentially, the company ended up being the split in the winner of virtualization, right? There used to be a day that you could not run multiple applications on the same server. And VMware brought that to the table along with Red Hat and a few other companies. But this very iconic company, this very engineering company comes face to face now with a company that is amazing at financial engineering. And I don't mean that as a knock. I mean, you can take it as you like, but
They've done it once before. I mean, with Michael.
no, they have done it multiple times. Broadcom has. And
I just meant VMware's experienced a financial engineering genius that took the helm of the company when Michael did it.
yeah, and what I was referring to was primarily Broadcom, which
Okay.
was so. First off, Broadcom is kind of like, gosh, using the word parasite is a bad word, but Broadcom didn't even start as Broadcom. Broadcom started off as Avago, and Avago acquired Broadcom and took Broadcom's name, which is crazy because here we go. I hear the plan is to put all software under VMware. So it's kind of like a parasite that comes in, takes on the host, and takes the resources, and it doesn't kill what it acquires, but it takes what it needs. Wall Street freaking loves this company. What's their market cap? 225 billion, Daniel.
And that's after a pretty significant pullback from the highs.
I mean, Wall Street loves this. And by the way, listen, I am all in on capitalism. I'm all in on making a buck. I almost went into investment banking as my first job. I don't, dislike this, but I'm here to ask the hard questions, right? I'm an industry analyst and I have to do that. Broadcom's playbook for acquisitions that I've seen in the past is you gut R&D and primarily the research portion of that. You gut OpEx. In fact, you get it to a 1%. You raise prices. And part of the background of what you've seen here is that they try to buy companies that it's hard to switch out of.
Sticky.
Yeah. Broadcom bought a switch company, and it was for the CI and HCI. It was the networking backbone. It tripled prices to OEMs. And I've talked to multiple product leaders where it went in and did that. But what they do from the executives is they make it very sticky for the executives, meaning you hit these objectives and I will make you rich. On the other hand, you pull back research and you only focus on development, you start to have some issues. I think a good example is what happened with Wi-Fi. Broadcom was the Wi-Fi machine, and then it cut back on its investments in R&D in that space. And who invented mesh Wi-Fi? It wasn't Broadcom. It was Qualcomm. And Qualcomm went in there and basically stole a ton of market share away from Broadcom, right? Because they were asleep at the wheel. They didn't want to invest in that. I think that's a really good example here. So my expectation is that I guess what was the commitment that Broadcom made? They were going to triple EBITDA in 3 years or double it. Let's just assume
8.5 billion in EBITDA in 3 years or something.
Yeah, let's just assume for numbers it's doubling. Daniel, to double EBITDA in 2 years without radically doing something different, I'm sorry, you're not a genius enough to be able to do that the prior management couldn't do that. What are you going to do? You can do one of two things. You raise prices and or you lay off a ton of people. So again, not weighing in, just not putting, what's the right word? Putting my editorialism on it. I'm just saying what I think is going to happen. I don't have skin in the game. I don't own VMware. I don't own Broadcom. I'm just here.
You don't own any of these companies.
I'm just giving you ideas of what there is to come.
Well, and just a quick boomerang, because this is the big topic of the week. Look, we're in a pretty interesting market point where I think you can sell that to the market. Hey, I'm going to, you see a bunch of companies, like you mentioned NVIDIA, making comments about freezing hiring. I mean, the street wants to hear this stuff right now. We're in this, a year ago it was grow, spend, grow, and now we're at cash is king, cash flow. We don't want to see adjusted EPS. We want to see real earnings. We want to see how much cash your business is creating. And Hawk10 is really good at making a business create cash. What you mentioned, cutting people, Pat, and it's going to be R&D. It's going to be cut out of the innovation. So the question is, again, to keep up with this multi-cloud journey that everyone's on, is VMware far enough along with its current software solution to be able to compete with what's going to come from the hyperscale cloud providers, what's going to come from other software providers that aren't going to cut back severely or at all on investment? And that's, I think, a lot of the concern. Like I said, this is a company that's deeply entrenched in the CIO office of almost every big enterprise on the planet that's dealing with on-prem workloads.
Not almost every except for cloud native.
Right. Those are only a very small subset of companies. I mean, that you're talking about companies that maybe started in the last 10 years. I mean, everything else has big legacy, primal on-prem deployments that need a lot of modernization.
If you're Bank of America, you probably have 5,000 applications sitting on VMware, okay? It is not a trivial task to even move those to Red Hat or KVM. You want to refactor those and put them in a container? Even more. You don't even have resources to do it. So what are you going to do when they raise your prices?
You're going to pay.
You're going to pay.
So what I'm saying is, as a technology pundits or analysts or whatever we like to call ourselves, it's pretty easy to look at this and say, God, this, ugh. And, but as a financial person reading the markets, you're like, God, this guy's sharp.
And you know what?
By the way, Michael Dell signed it off on it. I mean, he said if the board supports it, he's going to support it. And he owns 40% of this thing.
Yeah.
And to my point is, by the way, what a great face-off, man. Getting those two in a room together, just two absolute financial wizards.
Yeah, totally. You know what? And I'm going to boomerang again. You know what kind of annoyed me is people trying to convince me there was some big tech strategy behind this. That's just a bunch of BS. Listen, I know Broadcom better than anybody out there. I know how they operate, I know how they think. Don't try to convince me there's some grand tech strategy out there. Now, on the whole IPU, NPU thing, you might have a point, right? Because they're rock stars in networking, but also understand that VMware has started with their software stack for offloading networking.
Oh, it's going to take time. And like I said, they're going to have to pour some dollars in. You can't cut all your engineering and build that. But I'm just saying the IP might be there for it. And the possibility is there. And he is apparently trying something. Well, I guess, as you said, it's not different in terms of things he's done in terms of rebranding, but it's different than what he's done so far with the software business.
Yeah.
But I think it's an opportunity. It's timing. It's a discount on a great asset that's sticky, got good cash flow, good EBITDA. It really meets the mark there. The long-term innovation, I think, you and I are going to have to come back in a year and do a what happened to VMware. And then I guess time will tell. So I don't think we 100% agree, but I think we're pretty much in alignment here that financially this thing's brilliant. From a technology standpoint, there are as many, if not more, question marks than anything else out there.